Quality of education and dropouts as South African learners enter the last leg of the school year continues to grow. Given the disruption of COVID-19 and school closures, learners are facing challenges such as work overload, a rushed syllabus and anxiety. This is especially true for our matric students who have been handed an unprecedented challenge this year. To discuss this further, we are now joined on the line by Zoe Mann, a program director for the Learning Trust, an organization that has been providing funding and support to educational non-profits in the after-school sector for 10 years. Zoe, good morning and thank you for joining us on Africa Rise and Shine.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and I hope you're good too, Zoe. Now, let's first reflect on the challenges faced by learners now that they've returned to school, as necessary as the move was.
Yeah, they have, and I think that was the right decision. Obviously, I mean, people need to return to school, but it's come at a cost of teachers and learners being incredibly overwhelmed. Teacher shortages because of comorbidities and all sorts of other reasons, and they're just not getting through the curriculum. The rushed syllabus and overcrowded classrooms are just causing a huge amount of stress on learners and teachers, and it's a cycle. They feed off each other. Steps are being made, to try and solve some of that. I think the decisions yesterday of revising the progression promotion criteria, and the assessment weighting and number of question papers, etc. These are all designed to help the situation, and they can help the situation, but at what expense? And there's learners who are still going to be progressed into further years but just don't have the foundational knowledge. So that's at lower levels, and then the grade 12s themselves are in a huge mess because they just haven't had the support, the academic support, the post-school placement support, and the psychosocial support that they need during this time by the schools. And this is where our work comes in to play, because we support after-school programs who operate outside of school time with those learners. And they've done incredible work to adapt and to try and support the grade 12 learners during this time through virtual programming, continuing with providing meals that are needed, and also really stepping in. A couple of organizations that I can think of have really, taken it on to be more involved in the learner's life space. So doing home visits. Just Grace in Lango in Cape Town hired 2 social workers and began doing home visits because they realized that this whole pandemic has had such a toll on the mental health of young people, and particularly that grade 12 group. So they're really stepping up.
Now, Zoe, do you think that, the learners currently, you touch on the fact that, which is, we all know that foundation phase is very key, and with such a crisis and a pandemic, and having spent a huge amount of time not in school, not learning, has added to the challenges that learners have been facing across the country. Now, do you think that learners currently are performing to their best of their abilities this year, or do you think that something more needs to be done, just considering also the amount of time that we have left in the academic year?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And no, of course, I think no one's performing at their best really at the moment. It's in crazy times. And I think something that was taken for granted is the intuitiveness of working from home, the self-directed learning. I think a lot of learners, even when they were resourced, even when they had access online, even when they had learner materials given to them by the schools or after-school programs, it wasn't intuitive to learn at home. It's not intuitive to learn on your own. And I think that's really added to the challenges. And we have such a short amount of time left to catch learners up, either to promote them to the next years and to pass matric. And this is where, the after-school programs that are providing academic support particularly are so valuable. So, there's Mamelodi Initiative, an organization up in Mamelodi, Pretoria, who are doing a specific program for catch-up at grade 12 in partnership with iSchools Africa. Transition Foundation in Ivory Park has been this, they've created incredible Zoom learning spaces on Saturday mornings for their learners to go through that foundational knowledge. And I think it's this thing of, just having to trim, really focusing on what is essential, what is the essential knowledge that is needed now for learners to progress or for learners to pass. So I think that the academic catch-up is needed to be done by the schools and then after-school programs, anyone else, parents that are able to provide that support, because there's just not enough time in the school day. And when learners are at school, it's not conducive for learning anyway, because of all the other challenges and the stress that teachers are under. So I think we haven't got much time, and we need to use that time effectively. And that's where civil society, I think, steps up, and after-school programs particularly.
Now, you touched on parents having to get more involved, and obviously the emotional support that comes from with a family at this point in time is very key. And access now to those Zoom online lessons that online classes that you're talking about. The access, which goes back to financial situations where some children may not have access to data or be able to go onto these online classes. How do we work around such situations?
I think that's been something that's really been exposed. There's almost these two school systems that are happening in South Africa, where the learners who are at more affluent institutions, they can go home and schools are closed, but they carry on online and they carry on. So yes, they lose normal days, but they don't lose days of learning. And I think the disservice that we've done to a lot of learners in the country is that we haven't afforded access to everybody to continue their learning. And so many after-school programs have managed to mobilize resources in this regard. We were able to generate some funding for sort of emergency COVID grants that were contributed towards data costs for a lot of organizations that were moving their programming online. And I think the philanthropic world and various funders have come on board to support organizations that have that ability to move online. A number of organizations have been really, really going for it online and just providing data costs to their tutors and to their learners. So that's been wonderful. But there have been cases where that isn't just, the resources aren't there or connectivity isn't there. For some reason, the East Rand in Johannesburg has been really difficult to get learners connected, even when they did have phones and data. And there, I think, linking back to your original point here around parents and caregivers and getting their involvement and offering that psychosocial support, I think that even calling, even an organization, after-school program, calling a learner, calling a household and finding out how are they doing, what's happening in your environment, how can we assist academically, how can we assist emotionally, has been also incredibly essential, frankly, during this time.
What's the reaction been like, once your team is on the ground and they make contact with these families and young learners or matriculants, so to speak? How do they feel? What are they saying with regards to the environment or the space that they find themselves in?
I think it's been varied. Initially, it was, I think with a lot of families losing income during the hard lockdown, the real need that was identified in those initial calls was for food, was for sustenance. And I think over time, it then went into almost confusion. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of, we're going back to school. No, we're not going back to school. Yes, we're going to deliver learning materials to the homes. No, we're not going to do that. There was a lot of confusion. And then there was this added confusion for parents and caregivers of whether to send their children back to school or back to after-school programs. Like, there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety, particularly in that grade 12 group. The conversations that I was privy to with grade 12, it was just a feeling of hopelessness, really, of lostness, of what is the point? And these are kids, particularly in after-school programs, who have committed to their studies, have, oftentimes are dedicating 3 days a week, 4 days a week to go to an additional class to learn more, right? So they're really committed to their studies. And I think it was just such a slap in the face, really, of all the hard work that they'd done and put in to then suddenly be, without a paddle. And the levels of anxiety and the levels of depression. I mean, I think the demotivation has been huge. And again, I think after-school programs at this time have played such a role in that because the relationships are so key. So most of these programs are run by young volunteers themselves, often learners who have come through similar programs and are sort of paying back or paying forward that support. And that relationship has been so important to keep the grade 12s going, I think.
Now, Zoe, what do you think are, the looming consequences, if the country's young minds do not get adequate support? What are we facing?
A disaster. No, let me be a bit more cheery. No, but it is. I mean, I think it is a bit scary, frankly, and saddening. What could be? I think that we are going to be faced with higher dropout rates as a result of this demotivation and frustration. We're going to see longer term effects, I think, on the economy, obviously. But I think in terms of I think right now it's just all hands on deck to try and catch up this year and do what we can to support the academic progress and the emotional well-being of learners, and particularly at this point in time, grade 12 learners, so that they can take that next step. And the post-school placements, I think, is so important. I think that's something that is not just passing matric. You can pass matric. And so all of, the schools, that's where they have to focus. They need to get the learners to pass matric. But after that, I think there's going to be, I'm scared, if I'm honest. I think there's going to be a lot of learners who perhaps manage to get through and pass matric, but they haven't looked at post-school opportunities. They haven't had that support. And again, I think there are lots of organizations out there that do provide that support, whether it be to their own learners. So in the case of Pakamani in Soweto and in Maknabini in Cape Town, they're doing some amazing work with application days and mentoring and staff applications. And I think there's going to be a need for that to keep learners kind of going after matric.
And the ones who are not, the lower grades from grade 11 down, okay, grade 11, you can consider them to, next year to be in matric, but, the lower grades in terms of from grade 10, and lower. What do we think should happen if you look at a child who has performed well and did well in school all their lives, and all of a sudden this year there's a huge shift, and it could be, as you mentioned, depression, the psychosocial effects of everything that has taken place this year. What happens then? What should the schools do? I think they're trying. I mean, this circular that was just released around the revision of promotion criteria, I think, is a step in that direction, right? So it's trying to say, we understand that this year is different, and your grades, your exam results aren't a reflection necessarily of your ability to progress into the next year. And I think that can be helpful, but I do worry that unless it's also addressed in the coming years with a more focused curriculum, I think, is needed. I think this trimming of the curriculum and really focusing on that foundational knowledge, I do think is really the only way that we can move forward. Otherwise, you're going to just keep having this backlog. So we can progress everybody, from grade 8 to 9 with these adjustments of the assessment criteria, and then in grade 9 you have a group of learners who haven't got those foundations. So I think
more programs that address those foundations, I think, are important. And I think, I do think schools need to think about their curriculum, think about what is it that's essential. And I think also just to work with other organizations that are in their spaces. They might be able to provide a certain level of content, but refer learners who are struggling in math to a maths after school program. Work together, get in a university to run a grade 10 career guidance day, so that you've got that. Be creative about it.
Now, Zoe, very quickly. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but very quickly, any call to action that you would like to emphasize?
I think this is why I said there, really, being sort of creative and working together. I think the only way, and this is what came out at the early stages of lockdown, is the unity in South Africa and the way we can work together. And my fear is that is dwindling, and will continue to. So, from an individual point of view, it's just to kind of step up in that way. And then I think for after school programs out there, or learners out there, or funders out there even that are interested in this work, I do encourage you to get in touch, because I think the more we work together and learn from each other, the stronger we are. So, you're not alone. We're not alone in this. We all have a responsibility to the young people in this country. So,
Zoe, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
And to you too. That's Zoe Mann, Program Director for the Learning